Thank you. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. So if we can have the gallery, please stop talking. Thank you. So we respect and recognize the First Nations within whose unceded lands the village of Kaslo is situated, including the Tanaha, the Snipes, and the Silks people, and the Indigenous and Métis residents of our community. And we have one late item, and that is just an addition of an in-camera portion to the meeting. So can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang? Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. And adoption of the minutes of the October 22nd meeting of council. If there are no errors or omissions. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Are you just voting? Or
I don't know if through the chair, I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but there's an item on the minutes that I'd like to just bring up briefly.
so it's not an error or an omission?
No, it's not. So
No. Okay. So then the minutes themselves are fine. So if that is something that you would like to do. Council reports. Yeah. All right. So then all those in favor? Motion is carried. And we have a delegation this evening from our fire chief, Eric Graham. Welcome, Eric, and thank you for the report. Fire Chief Graham is going to give us a report on the activities of the Kaslo Volunteer Fire Department for the last year.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've taken the liberty of providing a copy of the report for you guys. It's fairly brief, and in the interest of time, I'll try to skip through this fairly quickly. And then if there's any questions afterwards, I'm happy to answer them. If you can turn to the second page, you'll see I've just given a sort of a brief highlight of the incidents that have occurred in 2024 up to this date, just to show you some of the types of calls that we've attended, totaling 154, which is something I'll highlight moving forward. Talk about a couple of the strategic highlights of this year. Obviously, this is my inaugural, this is the inaugural year of the full-time fire chief, the village of Kaslo and the RDCK. Started in mid-February, and been fortunate enough to have Chief Yee, help with the transition. And he's stepped down to assistant chief, but he's been integral in this transition. So it's been great to have him.
Can those online please mute their microphones, please?
So within the regional district, they've implemented a new regional fire training program, which we are lucky to be part of. It's newly launched. It basically covers the 4 areas of a fire service in BC, according to the BC Professional Firefighters Training Program, and that covers truck ready, exterior operations, interior operations, and full service fire training. The feedback from it so far, and it's in its infancy stage right now, is that it's been very positive. The feedback's been really good. So we will continue to sort of train alongside the rest of the RDCK departments, and looking forward to the future of the training with the RDCK. Also, too, the benefit of it is that we get standardized training, and it really helps out when we're doing mutual and automatic aid with other departments. So there's a lot of positives to the program. Also, too, the RDCK bylaw 2923 has been approved, so that's the expansion of the medical first responder program in Area D, north of us and south of us. And so that is basically we're in the early planning stages to sort of get that underway in terms of training, equipment, recruits, and whatnot. So we're looking forward to expanding that program. I'll briefly touch on financial highlights. I didn't dig too deep into it. Obviously, it's probably a larger conversation, but just to be brief. The operational budget of 2024, we're on track to have that budget fully utilized. And then in addition to that, we did receive a $31,200 CBT Small Community Wildfire Readiness Program grant, which we are utilizing for to equip and outfit our new wildland medical response vehicle, which I'm going to talk about shortly, and some additional PPE for wildland firefighting. One large upcoming capital project is the replacement of our engine 491. That's our 2002 Hub International truck, and it's planned to be replaced in 2027. So there's an estimated cost of approximately $750,000 to replace that unit. It's a large number, I know. And the cost, honestly, just keeps getting worse and worse, larger and larger as years go by. The cost of fire equipment is escalating rapidly. The purchasing process is going to begin early next year in 2025. Delivery times by manufacturers are expected anywhere from 18 to 24 months. So we need it's about a 2-year lead time. So we're going to start the planning process shortly. I'm going to speak quite a bit about operational highlights. First and foremost, our fire department roster. We've got 18 members currently, 18 active members. This includes myself as the new fire chief, assistant chief, 2 captains, 2 lieutenants, 10 firefighters, and 2 of the Lardo Valley medical first responders. Calls for service, as you can see, was detailed on page 2. For 2024, we responded to, so far to date, 154 incidents. So that's exceeding last year's total of 143 full year. And the call volume basically is, we're seeing a trend. It's a steady increase over the past few years. I highlighted 2023, which was 133 calls, and then 2022, which was 128 calls. So we're ramping up in call volume. Recruitment and retention. So the 2024 recruitment drive, we attracted 9 applicants. We managed to retain 5 of them, which is not a bad average, to be honest. It would have been nice to keep all 9, but more than 50% is always a positive. And so we've successfully integrated them into the team. Basically our recruitment strategy at this point is to basically just recruit all year round and see if we can, with any interest, try and integrate them into the department as soon as possible. We're not waiting for a certain time of year to be able to sort of implement our recruitment, which I feel is probably a good strategy at this point, just because if you have people waiting too long to get into the process, you find that they may have lost interest or whatnot. So it's good to capture that as quick as possible. The recognition of service. So we have 3 members that are going to be recognized for their long-term service milestones this year at our annual banquet, which is going to occur this December. We have 1 individual that has 5 years, another individual with 10 years, and another with 15 years. So that's great to see that sort of longevity in the fire department. I would say that an average lifespan of a typical firefighter would be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So it's nice to see 5 to 15 ranges, which is great. Speak a little bit about training. So our regular training sessions, we're basically covering both basic and advanced firefighter techniques. And then once a month, we focus on medical first responder skills to keep our skills sharp in that area, as it's a large component of our call volume, as you can see. In addition, the department has participated this year in a few joint training exercises, one with the Balfour Fire Department, which is our mutual aid department to the south of us. And as well, we did take part recently in a full-scale exercise with Kaslo Search and Rescue, Kaslo RCMP, and BC Emergency Health Services, which went really well. Couple of notable courses that we've gone through this year. We did complete our wildland firefighter level 1, and I believe that everyone except for 2 was involved in that course. So it was a very successful turnout rate. And we've also completed now our medical first responder scope of practice expansion, excuse me, which is basically that's brought down from the province. It's changed our scope somewhat, and we've been able to sort of provide a little bit of an additional medical service to patrons now, to customers. Our level of service. So currently we're designated as an exterior or an external, sorry, that's a typo. It's exterior firefighting operations level of service. And I can speak a little bit more to that. I know that there's probably a few things that aren't, common terminology. But this is basically fighting a fire from the exterior of the structure at this point. The department, or we, plan to complete our interior firefighter operations next year. So we should be at that level by the end of 2025, which is great. So getting out in the community, it's a big thing. It's a big part of what we do. And, we're going to continue to try and find different ways to reach out to the community and support of the community and, just sort of basic public relations. Our efforts this year included, we did a lot of things with Fire Smart. We had a Fire Smart neighborhood awareness initiative that was actually instigated by Kaslo Fire Smart, Jesse Lay. We did a Lower Kaslo River sort of fuel management exercise / barbecue, meet and greet type thing. It went really well. There was a fair amount of public participants as well, so it was great to get out there and engage with the community in that way and work together to understand sort of a little bit more about the Fire Smart initiatives. But we also attended JV Humphreys. We did a fire hall tour with JV Humphreys actually with Kaslo Fire Smart. Jesse did a presentation on the Fire Smart principles, and then basically we just took the kids around the fire hall, showed them the trucks, got them into some fire gear, did a couple of demonstrations, and then we had them outside spraying some water from the fire hose, which was, I'm sure, was probably the highlight for most of the kids. It was actually a highlight for me too, so to be honest, it was pretty fun. On top of that, so Fire Prevention Week in October, it went really well. I plan to do a lot more activities for Fire Prevention Week, but this year we set up a booth with Kaslo Fire Smart and for the Saturday market, just at the tail end of Fire Prevention Week. I unfortunately wasn't unable to attend. I was out of the province actually, but it sounded like it was a very positive thing. We handed out some smoke alarms, quite a few smoke alarms, and provided some public information. So it sounded like it was a very good turnout, good event. Also too, we did a fire safety presentation for grade 1 to 3, I believe it was. It may have been K to 3. I think it was 1 to 3. It's the group. So we did a fire safety presentation to grade 1 to 3 at JV Humphreys during that week. It was great. The kids learned a lot, and then we took them outside and they got to climb around the fire truck a little bit. And we did a demonstration out there. So they were really happy to be able to do that as well. In addition to that, we also engaged with a couple of the local neighborhoods, one in Pine Ridge and one in Bayview. We talked about Fire Smart principles. In Pine Ridge, we actually went out and did an exercise, doing some quick Fire Smart property response in terms of if there was some sort of a wildfire that was encroaching on the properties, that we would go out and do a quick removal of combustibles around the property. So we did a sort of a full-scale exercise in Pine Ridge. And then in Bayview, we attended one of their Fire Smart or community neighborhood Fire Smart meetings and just discussed things like fire sprinklers, sprinklering homes, what to do, things like that. And obviously, basically emphasizing the Fire Smart principles for homes. Other than that, we did participate in May Days. We did the parade, and then we had we had truck tour. We were offering truck tours at the show and shine there as well for the partial and shine. Lastly, for operations, fire inspections, they're going to be underway in the next couple of weeks. I believe I'm working with the assistant chief of the RDCK in charge of prevention. And so he's going to, he'd like to come and sort of see how I sort of guide me through the process here. So fire inspections of all public buildings are going to start within the next few weeks and carry on moving forward in terms of like a regular schedule of inspections. Quickly looking forward, I know I've talked about this before, but I'm truly hopeful that by late spring 2025, our wildland and medical response vehicle will be up and running and ready for the summer season. This is a CBT funded medical response or wildland and medical response vehicle. It's going to be great to get that. It's replacing the old Squad 1 that we have that is no longer in service. So it's going to be good to have that apparatus back and running in that regard. Also CBT, Small Communities Wildfire Readiness Grant. I've also applied for this next year's cycle of the grant. I'm hoping to get maximum funding. I would really like to see a lot of tools and equipment and another complement of PPE to enhance our wildfire firefighting capabilities for our department. It's a lot of money, it's very costly, and it's nice to have that grant to be able to access. Another thing that I really would like to talk about further, but I won't speak much to it, but I would like to put a proposal together, and I'm developing it currently to establish dedicated firefighter training grounds. And I would like to see also a Class A burn structure down the road, ideally located, close to or adjacent to the Emergency Services Center on Arena Ave. Some future discussion, just planting the seed there. In terms of membership growth, my goal or our goal for 2025 and 26 is to increase our membership to 24 active members. So I'm looking for 6 more recruits by the end of next year, hopefully. That would sort of kind of bring us on the higher end of the membership roster. And that's not including the recruits that we're looking for in the Argenta, Meadow Creek, and the Ainsworth Woodbury sort of medical first responder program. That's something extra. Parking improvements, I've been looking around the Emergency Service Center, so I'm hoping, and I've had discussions with the RDCK about possibly increasing the paved area, the parking area there, to be able to provide more additional paved parking for all the emergency responders and public around the building. I don't know how many people have you been there recently, but there is a lot. We've got a lot of equipment from all of us, the search and rescue, the fire department. We continue to grow, and so there is the need for some more space, and especially when it's the responders that need to come and park around the area. There's very limited space. So I am going to be looking to see if we can sort of find a way to pave a little bit more of the area and provide a little bit more additional parking. And lastly, just a quick note, I know this isn't the village of Kaslo, but there is planning underway for the installation of fire hydrants in Woodbury Village, which is great. I'm not sure exactly how many yet, depending on funding, but it looks like we may have a few in the near future, which is going to really improve the fire flow in that area. And because currently we're basically relying on drafting water from the lake and shuttling water to locations to be able to provide firefighting water flows, which operationally is very time consuming and resource intensive. So it's going to be good to be able to provide those hydrants and work a little bit quicker at getting on fires. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you very much. That was a lot of information.
I know.
Oh,
I apologize.
No, that's
Lengthy.
because you've given us a written copy, so we don't have to retain all that you said. It's very beneficial. Are there any questions for Fire Chief Jane? Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, thank you for coming. In terms of wildfire preparedness, when you're looking at acquisition of tools and equipment, Have you been in touch at all with the community forest? Because I know that they've been in kind of doing that as well. And yeah, so I guess I would just, and a follow-up would be, is wildfire level 1 the equivalent of the S100, or is that above or below that?
So through the chair, first part of the question, yeah, like I've definitely, I've had conversations with the community forests. They have reached out to me too. Well, I mean, we have conversations usually at the Fire Smart meetings, but they have made myself aware that there is there's equipment and resources there that are available. I've actually reached out to sort of our emergency management partners at the RDCK because we're trying to figure out whether they should, which they probably should be put on a resource list so that we know that they're there in terms of emergency. So that's actually underway right now. You know, there's usually a fairly comprehensive resource list in place, and I don't know whether those resources are actually on that resource list through our emergency planning program, but that's certainly something that I've been made aware of, and it's in the process. Your second question, sorry again.
Is the wildfire level 1 kind of the equivalent of an F100, or is
so through the chair? Wildland firefighting level 1 is well above S100. It really incorporates S100 and S185. So it's the basic safety, and then a little bit more of the skills involved. So it's more of a comprehensive firefighting program for wildland fires.
Any other questions? So, for the fire inspections, are they going to be scheduled or will you just be dropping in? Because I know, well, where I work is one of the locations, and just because I know I'm going to have absences. So, and I must say that the inspections that were done by the fire department were far superior to what was previously done. They were more comprehensive, and I think they are looking more to achieve what we should be doing, which is looking after not only your own building, but you're protecting your neighbors' buildings by being fire safe within your own structure. So that was a question. I guess probably more I should have asked that outside, but others might be interested as well.
Okay, good question, Madam Mayor. And I'll be honest, the concept at this point with the fire prevention chief with the RDCK, his intention is to do unannounced spot inspections. Yeah, but if I may, I think that it is important, and I think that there's an opportunity to actually schedule inspections. I think it's good customer service to be able to give someone some time. I mean, at the end of the day, all we want to do is make sure that there's compliance with, it's not trying to catch someone in the act of doing something. So I do understand the concept of doing sort of an unannounced inspection, but I do truly believe that there's an opportunity to be able to schedule these things so it doesn't put the customer out. You know, like it doesn't leave you shorthanded if we come in the middle of the day and, you know, that's the peak time where your business is running. So I do see both sides to it, but I would like to see more of a announced inspection schedule.
I just my intention was just not to be missed.
Oh yes.
not so that I did miss it.
Right. Yes.
So and regarding the item for increased paving for parking apparatus on, I imagine that will bring you to North Kootenay Lake Services Committee meeting to talk about that. And have you? I know KSAR has been discussing putting an additional building up. Will that ease some of that pressure on those parking spots?
It's hard to say, and I'll be honest, I haven't had really good discussions about what exactly they're planning to put on that back portion. But I think it will. At the end of the day, I'm sure that there is going to be part of a portion of their equipment, tools, possibly apparatus that are going to get moved back there, which will ease more, I think, internally in the truck bays and whatnot than on the exterior. But there is, yeah, I think if there's an opportunity to move some of the things that are already around, existing and around the perimeter of the emergency services center, then I think there would be opportunity to sort of alleviate some of that need. So keeping the cost down, absolutely.
And my last question, I know you've got another unit, an expensive unit on order. Is the size of the equipment that we've got presently enough to serve any building that we currently have built in Kaslo? Because I know with ladder trucks and stuff, you need to be able to, if we decided in our bylaws to go to 4 stories, it might not be accommodated by current equipment.
That's correct. Yeah, that is a conversation to be had. If there is any intention to build higher, then it certainly may require specialized apparatus, such as a ladder truck. That's correct. We have sort of been talking about whether that's something that we could look at sooner than later. Unfortunately, the cost of an aerial vehicle, an aerial truck at this time is upwards to 1.5 million now is what you're looking at. So there's a possibility to maybe source used vehicles. The only problem with used ladders is they're complex. They're more complex than a fire truck, and then there's some servicing and maintenance issues that can be quite costly as well. So all those things are considerations.
All right, so if there's no more questions, thank you very much for your time tonight. And sorry we've taken so much of your evening, but we really appreciate that.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And you're welcome to stay if you wish, or you can leave because it is
It's training night.
It's training
Yeah,
night.
so I should probably go, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move into council reports. A written report, and then also a report on that was received regarding the FCM Board of Directors gathering in September, which I was unable to attend because we were at UBCM. So are there any questions on my report? Councillor Brown.
In your report, it said that a complete communities project introduction would be given to staff, but I didn't see that document anywhere in SharePoint. Is that something?
It's in the council resources.
It wasn't it? Okay, I looked in there and I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried some of those things are very long, so we're going to be part of our agenda. It doesn't make sense, so,
Well, I will read that with interest. Thank you.
you're welcome. Any reports from any of the members of council? Councillor Bird.
Yes, through the chair. So what I have to report is that there is now a new Fire Smart neighborhood recognized by BC Fire Smart BC. And that's the downtown one, calling downtown one with the hopes that there will eventually be a downtown 2 and a 3. And so that is the sort of the commercial block of Front Street, but no further than 4th. And whoever has properties along the alleyway, Penny Lane, and Center Street, the church, the post office. So a limited little area. And because of the work that we have done to organize ourselves in that area, because I'm a resident there, we've been granted $1,068, something like that, so that we can continue to do some more events, or like it's not a lot, it will be enough to hopefully have an event in the spring and just sort of make it more of a, like, get it going. It's really only begun. The other one is Kaslo Housing Society has an AGM 1 week from today, Tuesday at 7. And the board will be looking for replace 4 positions on the board, 7-member board. 2 of the current directors have volunteered to continue. We're really hoping at least to get 2 others to join. That's next Tuesday. And then to my earlier point about what's in the minutes from our previous, just our last meeting, I had made a notice of motion to look into increasing what would be the implications of, or how would we go about increasing the accommodation tax, the hotel tax, MRDT tax from 2% to 3%, with the 1% to be held in trust for housing initiatives. I haven't had time to do enough research on that. And when I do, I would like to be able to bring that back at a future date, but we could table it for now. That's what I need to do.
Was that notice of motion on the agenda?
No, it would not, because Councilor Greg and I have had this discussion before the agenda was created, so.
Perfect. All right, so that will just remain as an item that will carry forward until such time as the information is available. Okay, thank you. And that's a good reminder for people that they can get their groups together for a Fire Smart recognition. And it's not limited to, it could be Kaslo Area D. You just have to be an organized neighborhood, and neighbors helping neighbors, basically is what it is.
Yeah, three
themselves.
champions.
Yeah.
And then it gets started.
Excellent. All right, then committee meetings, there are the minutes from the Liquid Waste Monitoring Committee, Accessibility Committee, and the Recreation Grant Committee, and we will deal with the resolutions from those in our business portion of the meeting. And then staff reports, we've got CAO report. I didn't forget you this slide.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. You may recall a couple of months ago, our Municipal Insurance Association did a review of our policies and procedures, and they provided us with a report now. So council will receive a copy of that report in camera at the next meeting. We have our proposed RV park development, and staff are committed to getting an area on the website where the public can easily find staff reports and attachments by the end of the week. So we hope to have it by now. Hopefully by the end of this week, public should be able to have easy access. The information's already on the website, but as you know, you have to search through council meeting minutes. So timber marks, you may have noticed there's some giant
Staff members.
hammers on the table, so that's to let council know that our 2 timber marks have been recently renewed province, and wanted to show you what we have. That's what we stamp the logs with whenever they're being transported from site, to show that we have ownership and hopefully prevent theft. Community services, we have a housing needs report that's being accomplished in partnership with the regional district. The intent is highlighted in the written report you have here, which is there's a standardized method that the province wants us to follow. So every community has to follow the same method of determining what is the demand going to be in each community over the next 5 to 20 years. And in 2028, there's going to have to be another housing needs report, so it'll be updated, and then every 5 years thereafter, there'll be an update. Once that housing needs report's received, we need to make sure our OCP and zoning bylaws are aligned to enable that growth. Doesn't mean the growth is actually going to happen, because the market gets to decide if people want to move here, but at least our OCP and zoning bylaws would permit it. And those updates would have to be completed by the end of next year. So as I think council is aware, staff take part in bi-monthly meetings with the consultants that are doing the report, as well as regional district staff. And the goal is for a draft report to be delivered to the regional district at the end of November. So we should be able to share that with council at the December 12th, I think it is, council meeting. And I've made a note that staff have reviewed the preliminary profile for Kaslo. And if we don't do anything other than update our OCB and zoning bylaw, it's unlikely that we'd be able to meet the projected demand for our area. The metrics that are used to determine what the demand should be, they're the same method that's being used in large communities like Vancouver. So just really want to highlight that it's provincially mandated, the methodology that they're using. Doesn't mean when you read it that we actually are going to have, let's say, 1,300 residents in Kaslo in the next 5 years. It's just, if we use that methodology that Vancouver's using, for example, we would expect to have 1,300-ish people in Kaslo. Don't get tied to that number, it's not real. I want council to be prepared for when they receive that report of what that number means. So if council decided, oh, we really want to be able to achieve that number or actually enable it to happen, well, then there's going to need to be affordable rental units and affordable and attainable housing units for people to purchase, which we currently don't have either of those things. Just want you to be prepared for that report. Engineering and Public Works, a couple of weeks ago, we had our fall cleanup. So crews went around and picked up all of the leaves and branches that they could from our property owners. And naturally, the leaves didn't really start falling until the day after. So it's quite typical. It simply means that in the spring, we'll be picking those leaves up, getting rid of them. Public Works staff are also preparing for winter. So from an administrative point of view, it means that we're reviewing our snow clearing policy, which tells staff what your priorities are. And then we're also looking to develop a winter operations manual that details, when staff get called out, what the priority levels are and what equipment we have available. So just more detail. So you might get staff coming back to you before the end of the year, looking for an update to that policy to make sure it accurately reflects what we do and what council would like as far as strategic direction goes. When it comes to parks, I'm going to highlight the Kaslo Baseball Softball Association efforts. So there's dugouts that are currently being constructed, and we received a call after your last council meeting asking for additional in-kind services to help with the footings, the foundations for the dugouts. So since we didn't have an opportunity to come back to council in the moment, staff made the operational decision to offer our services. So there's an additional day and a half of staff labor and equipment that went towards helping out with the dugouts. And the goal is for the structures to be in place before year end, and then the actual remainder of the dugouts to be constructed in the spring. So all of that work is being coordinated by the association. It's not through the village. Development and planning, there's a regional growth management plan. This one's a little bit tricky because there's some pivoting being done by the regional district. There was an engagement plan that had been developed by a consultant and a link on a website to offer or to fill out an online survey. And the idea was that a regional growth management plan would kind of come out of this. However, there's conversations that have gone on within the regional district, and as well as feedback from municipalities like our council looking to be engaged in the process. And so all of that's led to regional district staff pivoting on what is going on. And at this point, it looks like they're titling their I don't know what to call it, their plan is something more like a service assessment rather than a regional growth plan. So day to day, there's kind of updates and it looks like it's evolving. So staff will just keep coming back to council and doing our best to keep you in the loop. It's not something staff or council have any control over. It's really being led by the regional district and them responding to feedback and et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I can say on that. Protective services, you'll recall there's an Emergency Disaster Response Act. It got talked about at the AKBLG and every other kind of meeting with local government staff. There's regulations that are supposed to come out by June of 2025. The village at this point, our intention has been to collaborate with the regional district on Indigenous engagement. All of that's necessary in order to adhere to the act and what we think the regulations are going to look like, this Indigenous engagement piece. And there's talk going on in the regional district right now with, you know, what's the scope of that engagement going to look like and how much is it going to cost and what are they going to be looking for from the village. We received $40,000 in principal from the province earlier this year to go towards Indigenous engagement in order to fulfill our obligations under the act. Doesn't mean all of it's going to be needed by the regional district. And there's questions for village staff right now about do we need to retain some of that for any engagement that the village needs to perform? Is it all needed by the regional district and the project that they're leading? So we'll keep council apprised once we have more information. And just to highlight something in general, certainly applies to this specific topic, but in general, if councillors have questions about projects that the regional district's leading that we're a part of, then the best process to follow as a councillor would be to direct questions to the mayor, who's our representative on the regional district. And if typically the mayor's really good at being able to answer those questions, but if there's anything that they can't answer, they can, you know, ask staff, and the staff can reach out to the regional district, or the mayor can reach out to the other elected officials in the regional district, and we can find you the answer. So just generally speaking, the mayor is your first point of contact, and then the mayor and staff can help get answers. Transportation, highlighting the aerodrome, the Powder Creek Lodge and village staff have chatted recently to figure out how can they use the apron without affecting other users of the apron being the big piece of pavement that's in between all of the hangars. You know, how do we avoid conflicts between people and vehicles and aircraft? So we've met, and there'll be a bit of follow-up to Powder Creek Lodge, but no issues. Just want you to be aware that there's a contract that will eventually sign to put them somewhere on the aerodrome property that's safe and makes good sense. Capital projects, Front Street Park. The contract was awarded back in August, and the contractor's been thinking about starting work. They did a little bit of excavation, but we've received a recent update that they're having trouble with their subcontractors who are needed to perform masonry work. And so it looks like the bulk of the work is going to need to occur in the spring. So that project will have to be carried forward in our budget. And that is the CAO report. Thank you, Mayor Hewitt.
Thank you. Any questions for CEO? Going to. Why did, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Please read that.
okay, well, because I'll be asked to
Okay.
vote on that. So we'll go to Councillor Lang. Thank you, Councillor Lang. Go ahead.
That's through the chair. As I've been out of town recently, I'm just curious what the activity going on the left side of the Bay Avenue, going up the hill on the left side. Looks like there's some catch basins or something being. Yeah, I'm just curious, is that a village activity or is it done privately?
Through the chair, I regret to inform you, I have the exact same questions. My assumption was that the property owner did some work on their property, and to my knowledge, it's not related to anything that the village has approved. So perhaps they're just holding it there for another project. I really can't comment.
Thank you very much.
I will turn that over to you, just regarding the item on protective services, the emergency and disaster. Well, no, it's actually not about that. It's about the Indigenous consultation with Edna. And that's, I've got the rare opportunity of being able to have this discussion with council because the regional district meeting is this week. So the agenda package was out in advance. Not in advance enough to get an item on our agenda, but we can have the discussion here, and it's the one that was discussed by the CAO earlier.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So the recommendation from RDCK staff that's going to the board is that the RDCK asked the member municipalities that were expressed interest in participating in this collaboration, that our council commit to providing funding out of that $40,000 that the province had provided us. So some of the questions that staff had about this recommendation that we know is coming is, do they need all the 40,000? Because if you take 40,000 from all of the member municipalities, as well as the rest of the regional district, that's $360,000. So my staff's question is, what is the scope of work and what is the budget estimate for that scope of work? How much does the regional district actually need from the village? Is it $40,000 or do we need to retain some of that? And the reason why it's important is because we don't know the regulations yet. They haven't come out. And so village staff don't know what's going to be required of us with respect to Indigenous engagement, and we might need to retain some of that money for our own efforts. The other parts of the recommendation are that an RFP be issued to get a consultant on board to perform this Indigenous engagement, and staff, are a bit, staff are on board with that, but certainly in order for council to ultimately endorse all of this through our director, through the mayor, we probably want to know what the scope of work is and what would be put into an RFP. So lots of questions that I think the directors will have when they're considering the staff recommendation. Is there anything else?
No.
Comment on?
So I did provide CAO a copy of the report that's on the regional district agenda. It's on a public agenda, so I can do that. But I didn't want to start overall discussion with council by broadcasting it out because it would cause people to have questions. So I thought it's better to wait until tonight, and so the CAO did give me a response and raise the issues that he mentioned. Those are things that we didn't even think about. The thought of the regional district was to not cause consultation fatigue for the First Nations, because you'd have one body approaching them for the engagement versus the potential for 10 the regional district plus the 9 municipalities within the regional district. So I was going to speak to a few of the items that the CAO had raised, that the village may need to retain some of the funding. that there isn't a budget really laid out, and because the requirements aren't set in stone yet, so we don't even know what the consultant will do, so a lot of this just depends how the discussion flows, because I'm one of 20. So I can make my arguments and, raise points of discussion, and sometimes I'm successful in getting others on board, and things are, we could perhaps defer it to another meeting to gather more information. That might be a possible outcome. But anyhow, I just wanted people to be aware of that. And all right. So then at Fire Smart Reports, so we've got information in there about trivia night, which is on the 16th,
November 28th.
November 28th, okay. And then the outdoor class event and Fire Smart rebates. Is anyone going to speak to those, or just if you have any questions, we can ask Jessie. I didn't see you on there. Sorry, Jessie.
Hello. I'm sorry, dog. I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
All right. Are there any questions for our Fire Smart coordinator? Councillor Bird.
Hey, Jessie, through the chair. So I see the report and I see the rebates and the amounts. I do have two neighbors who say they haven't received their rebates, and I'm wondering if all the rebates have been dispersed, or is there may be an issue because there's been a change of platform, and there's been a request for people that were signed on to FireSmart earlier this year to send their information to another platform. And I know that's maybe that was something that my neighbors got real nervous about and just did not respond. And so there's two things. Have all the rebates been dispersed? And is there a council role in that? And secondly, has there been a difficult or not a very good response to this changeover in the program and the programmers?
Yeah, good question. No, rebates have not been distributed yet. And yes, council does have a role to play in that. We've actually got that as an agenda item coming up. The reason being is that the municipal services agreement that we drafted up for this summer outlined 2023 funding programming where maximum rebates were $1,000. 2024 programming I saw a significant increase to $5,000. So we sort of made the decision to enable the rebate program through the CRI application that you may remember came to council a few meetings ago. That meant that we had to amend the agreement with the RDCK to sort of okay the disbursement of this different funding. So long story short, it took longer than I budgeted for and thought and perhaps communicated to the public. But it is on the agenda for later today. And so I'm hopeful that, once we have that amended agreement, we can start kind of sending out rebates shortly. Really impressed with the response this year. I think you can all see the figures in the agenda there. $43,000 in the municipality is pretty good, I think. To speak to your second question, so the Home Partners Program is what has facilitated the FireSmart assessments, and that's a national platform that is sort of facilitated through the BC or the Fire Chiefs. I'm not going to get the actual association correct, but Fire Chiefs Association of Canada or something similarly worded. There is a transition happening where FireSmart BC is now taking on that platform for FireSmart home assessments in British Columbia. From kind of a back-end administrator perspective, that's really fantastic. It's been challenging kind of on an operational level to communicate and get changes and improve programming with that kind of national body. So to have something that's a bit more localized, I think is really positive. And I think we'll see some kind of positive changes sort of from an administrative perspective. From a user perspective, it really doesn't make any difference. Like it's the same people, the same programming, the same home assessments. Where the communications with homeowners comes in is around privacy and information. So the server where all those home assessments are stored by that national agency that's been facilitating the program can't pass on those home assessments to the provincial platform without consent of those people's data. Really, I don't have anything to do with it directly. So when people have expressed concerns or have questions, I encourage them to reach out directly to FireSmart BC and the folks that are involved in that data sharing agreement. On the flip side of things, theoretically, if you have a hard copy of your FireSmart home assessment saved on your computer and you don't want that data or that information to go to the provincial platform, that's totally fine. Does that answer some of your questions, Councillor Britt?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jessie on her items? All right. Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you.
Then we'll move into correspondence. First item, tipping fee increase, and then several letters regarding South Peak and one regarding pickleball. And Mr. Brown, we have an item that you wanted to discuss.
I actually have two items that I'd like to pull for discussion. The first would be the South Beach Working Group regarding South Beach, and the second would be H. Bauer regarding pickleball.
Go ahead.
The chair. So I'd like to pull the item to ascertain if it will be responded to, and to a certain extent what the response would be. I'm not sure when I look at the request whether it could be allowed access to the land as it's privately owned. So there's lots of ins and outs in that request. So I guess my question and in the discussion is there a legal way to accommodate their request? And were there to not be, will the village staff be informing the working group of why the request cannot be permitted? So those would be kind of the questions along that line.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mary Jo. So Councillor Brown is correct in that there's currently no legal access to the village property. And so the risk that the village would run would be that it would be encouraging trespassing through private property in order to go to the area to view these signs. The information is already public on what land is owned by the private property owner and the village, and it's available on our website, soon to be more readily available on our website. And so, it would be up to council to decide what the value is of physically taking that information and putting it in physical space down the land, given that it would encourage trespassing. You could chat with the private property owner to see if they'd have an issue with it. They'd probably ask, why? What is the benefit to them of having this signage put up adjacent to their property? And I suspect, I can't speak for them, but I'm sure you can imagine it. They may or may not give their support, and then council will be in a position where you have to decide whether to act contrary to the wishes of the property owner and effectively promote trespassing. So delicate situation, I think, for council there. If council is keen to have signage in some way, then, perhaps it should be village signage rather than public signage. So signage where the village has direct control over the verbiage being used or information that's being shared, or that information, if there's specific information that council wants the public to know, then council could direct staff to put that information on the website so that it's available and accessible, not just to people down on the property site, but, you know, anywhere they are, through their computer, or those who can't leave their home or don't have time to go down and see the person. And if council decides, well, maybe it can be public signage, I think council would still want to retain control over what information is being shared. And then information would also need to be gathered by staff on our signage bylaw, what's permitted. It's not simply signage can go up anywhere on public property. It ultimately needs to be approved through the proper channels. So that's my best effort to answer those questions.
Supplemental?
Yeah.
So then just to be clear, the reason why that request wouldn't be actionable is that it is on private land and it would necessitate trespassing in order to be able to have people access information. So that seems pretty clear.
Second item?
So a second item, and it's just more, maybe I don't understand all the information, but are these courts, the pickleball courts, are they not available to the public or visitors at the moment? Like, does the club have exclusive use? My understanding was it was much like the ballpark, that they have use in the times that they've designated, but anytime outside of those, that the club's not using them, the public and visitors could use that. Is that not the case? Do they have exclusive use? Because the letter seems to indicate that the public and visitors do not have access to that area because it's exclusive at all times. So I guess I just need clarity around whether that is the case or whether it's just, you know, similarly to the baseball field during certain periods, and outside of those periods, any public or visitor could use those.
Through the chair, thank you. So the agreement with the pickleball racket club folks is for exclusive use. The agreements with baseball, softball are non-exclusive. Exclusive means that it's a secured area that they have complete control over who accesses it and when, and what fees are charged for access.
Supplemental. Through the chair. I suppose I would wonder if there were any way to allow public and visitors to be able to also enjoy that, as it is a public and publicly funded area. Would it be possible to speak with the racquetball club, pickleball club, to see if there were some times that they might be able to highlight that it might be possible to allow visitors or other public members who might not be part of that but might be interested in it or wanting to learn about it, as it is, you know, right next to the arena. It has had public funds go towards it. So I would see a lot of benefit in opening it beyond the exclusivity of just that club to visitors who might be coming from out of town, who also might want to enjoy pickleball while they're here, or people who might want to learn how to play it that haven't had an opportunity to join.
So I'll go to Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, just a couple of thoughts. I've used cross-country trails that were developed by a club, say in Kimberley, and then there's a box where you are requested to put in $10 for your trip. So, I mean, obviously they don't lock that place up. The other precedent I can think of is at the arena, there is public time and it does cost money, and there's certain hours and they are quite regular, you know, months and tots, and the open skating, and then otherwise because there's no one who's going to be monitoring who's coming and going, it's locked, or else there are teams actively going. So those are two kind of precedent, because I do sort of get the spirit of what he's trying to say, that they could make it a bit more user friendly for non-club owners, and considering how much public money is going into there, it's definitely something that my actual question to the CAO is, where are we at with the lease on that? Is that signed and sealed delivered, or is there an ability to change some clauses in the lease, assuming exclusivity is a clause in the lease?
Through the chair. If council would like staff to explore that option, then I believe staff should probably do a bunch of homework and come back to council with options for consideration. Staff have met with the president of the bracket club. Forgive me if that's the wrong title. And the way that it's set up is it's set up for exclusive use, and to make it open to the public would completely change the way that they operate. Those types of discussions happened at their AGM and other meetings they've had, and there was some agreement that they should continue the way they're doing it, and then there were some folks who didn't agree, and ultimately they reaffirmed the president that is keen to keep us moving in the direction we've been moving in, and that was the decision of their club. Then you have some folks who don't agree who are now coming to council and looking to change things. So I think staff would need to gather more information, meet with the current president and club to find out all the background information, and then return to council to give you a full picture of what it would mean to go in a new direction and change this lease agreement that's in the midst of being signed.
That's right.
Yeah, through the chair, I personally think that would be a waste of time. I don't think you're gonna move the current administration off the position of exclusive use. And I too was approached by a member of the public complaining about not being able to access the courts, especially when they had guests from out of town, they wanted to play, just whatever. And my suggestion to them was to possibly get a group together and look at an alternative site. So I think they've had more success raising money and applying to the village for a small chunk of land somewhere that they could build a second pickleball court, and then this conflict wouldn't exist. That was just my recommendation.
So I'm going to take a bigger picture. I think we've got to be cautious about trying to put our hands into everybody's business. Some of these facilities, a lot of our recreational facilities exist because of the volunteers who put in the time and the energy. With this facility in particular, it was in such a degraded state, people didn't want to play. They were down to a handful of members who just stayed on, I think, to have a viable association. So this group has raised the funds and made it what it is, so made it attractive for people who want to be here. We don't go to the arena and say, you've got to have it open at any time that somebody who might want to go out and skate. Do we, as the village, want to start charging we'd have to charge way more taxes if we were to start running these facilities. Are we going to have our volunteer group say, well, you can have it then? And then it's either going to shut the doors because we do not have the staffing levels to do that. Do we want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to staff the facilities that people enjoy because of the volunteer efforts put into those facilities? I think we've got to look at it big picture. It's not, a few people who haven't been able to play pickleball when they wanted to. And this is in this particular instance. I think we've got to look overall in our recreation. We are so blessed to have the volunteer base that we do, and the dedicated people and the donors who put the money into making these facilities what they are. That's and I would fear, alienating volunteers by wanting to start dictating what they're going to do when they've made it what it is. People can always run for seats on those boards and then change the rules from the inside rather than trying to have us impose rules on organizations. And it's because the lease is up and using that as a lever. don't usually talk, but that's my feelings that I don't think that we want. I personally don't think that that's somewhere we want to go with any of the organizations we deal with and have leases with. So this was just a discussion item. We're having no resolutions, and the lease is currently with staff to be developed. And since we're not making any resolutions, we will move on to question period. So it is 7:11, so we'll back up my Zoom here. And I'll give 15 minutes maximum, and I'd like people to limit to one question, please. And is there anyone online? If you want to use the raise hand function, I'll go online first. I'm not seeing anyone with their little virtual hand up, so I'll go to the room. Anyone have questions?
With respect, I have a question about the division of land between public and private on South Beach. And my question is, there's public, the shore is public. I don't know if there's a zone off the river that is also public, but let's just say, well, that's a question. Is there any point at which the private and the public land touch each other? In other words, could you, for instance, come through the shore and touch any village property and thereby be on public property without having transgressed public or private property? Is the question clear?
I think so, but it won't, in terms of gaining what the group is asking, it doesn't give the access to put up the signage in all the locations that is being requested. I don't think there might be a way. If you scramble along the dike, perhaps. I'm not sure. There is that one section right at the start that is owned by the private landowner. Is that correct? And that's why the gate is there, because that is their private land.
Well, let's just say that the signage itself isn't part of the question. Just the ability for the public to walk from public land to public land, from say the shoreline to this web of land the village owns. Could you actually walk from one to the other without crossing private land?
Corporate officers looking up on the map. So if there's another question while the corporate officer is looking that information up.
It's just a question of process, so if something isn't on the agenda and it hasn't been brought up for discussion at this meeting, I can't ask a question about it, is that right? Okay, that's what I thought.
Great.
I think, and my question is similar to your, by looking as Catherine's looking at the map, it looks like there is village-owned land that is not on the road by the gate, but it's actually further up the road that heads to the golf course. It comes down. Anyhow, I guess my question was similar. So in other words, at this point, the village has no access to its own land. Is that correct?
Yeah, go ahead. Please.
Through the chair, so the village does not have access to the road allowances through the gate, and as the general public is typically accessing South Beach. There's no public access to the road allowances. the village owns the majority of the land along the river. There are a couple of pieces, parcels that interrupt it. It's not continuous. Village owns most of it, but it's not continuous along the river. And then along the lake shore, there are a couple of road allowances that, you know, head from the golf course to the waterfront. If you look behind you, there's a,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
so you can, the red or the burgundy, that's village road allowances. And the yellow, that's the land that the village is considering transferring into our name. The blank areas that are in between all the red, that's private property. So you can see that the private landowner owns most of the land that's on the lake shore, other than this, a couple of road allowances that get close. And so the proposal that's, you know, we're working with right now from the developer is where, you know, there's a certain type of subdivision that they are interested in. And if they go with that type of subdivision, then the village would be entitled to require the private property owner to give the village a 7-meter strip of land along the lake shore. So basically where you see the natural boundary down on the lake shore, where kind of the trees stop growing and there's a bunch of, you know, leaves and logs, from there, 7 meters inland would be owned by the village. The village would also own all of the land along the river, all the way up to the highway. And so effectively, it provides the public with access not only all the way along the river, but all the way along the lake shore as well. And in return, what they're asking for is the road allowances, the burgundy or red, to be transferred into their name.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So conceivably, one could access at the top of the yellow closer to the river.
Not right now.
Not now. Yeah. But does this touch public land use? Does it touch students?
I would say that road allowance in particular, it looks to me like it's touching the natural boundary of the lake shore. So I would say yes. And so when you read the legislation around the village disposing of a road allowance or access to the lake shore, so to speak, the only way the village is allowed by legislation to dispose of that road allowance is if in exchange, we're providing equal or better access to the lake shore for the public. Whereas right now, the public has no effective way to get to that road allowance. That's why the transfer of land, i.e. that yellow areas that you're looking at, that would give the public legal access to the lake shore. That's why it's of interest to consider, to give the public legal access to the lake shore, including that 7-meter strip that we would gain.
But as far as right now, in the way it sits and stands right now, it would appear to me that one can access the village property right there.
Yeah, correct, by boat. We just can't get the public to that road allowance, and that's what we're trying to do, is give the public access.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, and I still don't see any hands online, so thank you for your questions. You can, I'll give you an opportunity to leave if you'd like, or you can stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, you're welcome. Right, so now we'll move into business. Our first item is council strategic priorities. So the recommendation is that council's strategic priorities through 2025 be adopted as presented in the staff report titled Council Strategic Priorities through 2025 dated November 5th, 2024. Oh. Yeah, they're worded as separately. They're not and furthers. That's the way I'm taking it. I had Councillor Lang made that motion and seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. And that the CAO ensures staff work plans align with council strategic priorities through 2025. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. And that the CAO provides council with quarterly updates on council strategic priorities through 2025. Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. Discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. And that the CAO schedules an annual review of council strategic priorities for the fall of 2025. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next item is a council code of conduct. Thank you very much for getting this done. That was lightning really, yeah, pretty quick. Very comprehensive, and I quite like it. So the recommendation, if there's no questions or any revisions or anything that council would like, Councillor Bird?
Through the chair, appropriately speak now.
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple of things in there that I noticed. I think I would like to add the words "and village contractors," so that where are we here? In the introduction and a couple of times further along, council members, village staff, and its contractors. Now I didn't write this clearly enough for me to read, but okay, where's the introduction? There are several times where we're talking about councillors' behavior towards staff and like you have an umbrella kind of term for, I'll get to the top here. Okay, so like in the introductions or the last sentence, ensuring that conduct set out in this policy are followed in all our dealings with every person, including those with other council members, village staff, I think village contractors, and the public. That would be an addition that I think should be there, because there's quite a number of times when we have people that are not exactly staff, but they do maybe planning work or and I just think they need to be included in the umbrella there.
Related to that, I've got a question. Would council normally be interacting with them other than at a council meeting when this policy would apply?
No.
So, because that typically would be staff who would interact with our contractors, right?
I don't live in a box. I mean, I'm just, I don't see.
No, one would hope that we would.
Yes, one would hope, but
Yeah.
Just to be.
Go ahead, CEO Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. Perhaps what staff could do on the last page of the policy, there's definitions. And what we could do is define the word public to include contractors and residents in general, or just anyone who's other than council and staff. And that would then fill any void if that's agreeable.
Sure.
One more?
Yep, go ahead.
Chair. I found it difficult to understand 11, conduct of meetings. And it says there's a clause at the end that would be more effective in the middle of the sentence. So Here's my suggestion. Council members will not interact or communicate with members of the public via email, text, or other social media during open or closed council meetings about matters being considered at that meeting, period. So the way it's worded with the via email, text, or other social media applications at the end, it refers to the meeting, being that matters being considered at the meeting via, because we often get matters being considered at the meeting via email, text, or other social media application. The clause is just in the wrong spot, and that's why I had to read it 2 or 3 times to get it, what the point of it was. Somebody run that through again? Got it? Yeah, just a grammar thing. Make it easier to understand really, because I did have to read it twice to understand what the point of it was. Yeah, see if we can just consider that an amendment. Okay, any other comment? All right, so then the recommendation is that the council code of conduct policy be adopted as amended with those 2 slight changes within a staff report dated November 4th, 2024. By Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And disposition of municipal lands. For the report, the recommendation is that the village dispose of PID 032-057-130 to Margaret Edwards in the amount of $718, and that the corporate officer fully executes the purchase and sale agreement and land transfer as described in the staff report dated disposition of lot 6515 6th Street dated November 5th, 2024. By Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? Can I just ask, I'm assuming there was still no public comment? No, okay. I just thought since nothing to report. Okay, perfect. All right, so all those in favor? That motion is carried. And surface species. Recommendation is that the corporate officer sign the lease agreement with the province of BC for their use of space at City Hall through August 31st, 2028. By Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And 7.5, RDCK Municipal Services Agreement, Fire Smart. So this is the one that the Fire Smart coordinator was referring to when she was answering the question, Bird, I think, or sorry, Councillor Bird. That the corporate officer signed the amendment of the municipal services agreement between the Village of Kaslo and the Regional District of Central Kootenay regarding the Fire Smart program. Okay, seconded by Councillor Brown. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And Imperial Oil lease renewal. The recommendation is that the Village of Kaslo advise Imperial Oil that it wishes to extend the license agreement for 307 5th Street, Lot 1 Plan, NEP 11799, District Lot 208, Kootenay Land District for a 5-year term through October 2030. By Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. Discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. And fall recreation grant awards. The recommendation is that the fall recreation grants be awarded as follows. Kaslo and Area Seniors Association, $500. Kaslo and Area Youth Council, $300. Kaslo and District Minor Hockey, $500. Kaslo Racket Club, $500. Kaslo Baseball and Softball, $500. Kootenay Lake Historical Society, $400. Kootenay Lake Independent School Society, Periwinkle, $500. Kaslo Outdoor Recreation and Trails Society, $500, and Kaslo District Public Library, $500.
Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. And grant application for water quality monitoring. Recommendation is that the village applies to the province of BC's infrastructure planning grant program for funding to conduct lake water quality monitoring as described in staff report titled Grant Application Lake Water Quality Monitoring dated November 6, 2024, and if successful with the grant application that the village conduct lake water quality monitoring in accordance with its liquid waste monitoring plan. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And last item in our open agenda is business license amendment bylaw. And the recommendation is does anyone have any questions before Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, specifically about 1307. In the report, it's talking about proposed bylaw does not alter the amount of the number of mobile vendors that are permitted at a given time, which is currently set at 5. The first come, first serve kind of thing, but it does state council may direct changes to these provisions if desired. Adjustments to the fees that apply for business licenses could be considered when council updates the fees and charges by law. So I guess the discussion I would have in light of some hearing from the public recently about mobile vendors specifically, would now be the proper time in looking at these amendments to consider more than 5 or less than 5, or would this be something where we would put this through and then that would be a conversation to be had at a later date?
If it's a minor amendment, it could probably be done now. I think that staff is wanting to get this done before year's end, and we would have to do first reading today and then second and third and then adoption at the December meeting.
That's something I told.
So I'll let
I think that's fine if there's agreement at the council table that that's something that is not a controversial change, then it can be done. I think that if it's something that is going to be require more discussion and perhaps a committee of the whole meeting, my suggestion would be to not make that change at this time and revisit that in the new year when we have a little bit of more time. The reason that I'm suggesting that is that we would really like to have clarification about the renewal provisions prior to December 31st, January 1st, when that renewal happens. So it's certainly possible that if there's agreement at the council table, that's a very specific and easy to make fix, and it can be done. I do just draw your attention to the fact that there are some outlined in item 7, we do have to have a process for notifying the public that is acceptable to council on this. So one of the other things that I would be asking would be some direction to staff about which of the available options or something different council would like to see. So at a minimum, we would post a notice in the paper and on the website. And I think that I would recommend that as a minimum. I think that if council wants, we could certainly look at other options like either notifying all the members of the Chamber of Commerce or bring a direct mail out to current license holders. So that's my other little request for today.
I can say that the chamber is meeting next Tuesday, and I was going to ask if it was appropriate for me to forward the full staff report on to them and ask them if they want to put it on the agenda for consideration and for review. Okay, I can do that. Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, that was what I was thinking, that that would be an effective way of beyond what you call as the minimum as to getting more people aware of it. But then how much time would they have to request to submit feedback? Like, let's assume it's not gonna be, oh, what a wonderful package is exactly what I was hoping for. So how will you work with the public feedback?
Well, anything that I get before the agenda deadline, I will include in the package for council. And
So if it's Tuesday.
yeah, which is definitely tight turnarounds. Obviously, if there is, a need for more discussion and feedback around it, there's also the option of calling a special meeting to be able to make changes to the content of the bylaw, at the meeting on November 26th. And then we would need an additional meeting sometime between November 26th and the end of the calendar year in order to have those provisions in effect for January 1st. So definitely tight. The other option is that if the feedback comes in, council could decide that that's going to wait until the new year, and then there would be more time to review some of those elements, like the if you want to change, if you don't want to make changes to the number of mobile vendors today, but you do think it's something that you maybe want to do before next year's tourist season, then that could be scheduled for early in the new year, along with any other feedback. I think that the other piece is that there's likely some discussion about the fees that are going to apply to mobile vendors, and that may also not be fully resolved before November 31st. I think we have a possibility.
So these fees are what they currently are, and so any changes that we make that aren't before the year's end will be in place for the entirety of 2025.
Mobile vendors are a little bit different because we're hoping to have them not automatically renewed, so they're not necessarily an annual fee, so they could be changed and then they will take effect upon adoption of the bylaw, and any licenses that were applied for after that bylaw is adopted would be governed by the new fee schedule.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, as far as the public outreach, you would have an email list of all the current business owners, licensed business owners. You don't.
No, not necessarily. They're not required to provide an email address for us, so we have a mailing address for everybody. For many, we have email contact, but definitely not for all.
It won't be as simple as a simple email saying, please check the website. There may be something of interest for you to check. Okay, Canada.
I'm not sure whether, well, I don't remember seeing it, but for a mobile vendor, they have to be located on a premises where the landowner has allowed that, and it's also the product they're vending has to be in keeping with the land use, correct? Do we have in the application form a requirement for them to show proof that the land that they used previously and that they're hoping to continue to use, that they actually do have the authority? Because we, by issuing them a license, we cannot override the private landowner's right to the use of their own land and how they're going to use it, correct? Is there a provision such as that?
So that's what we're trying to put in place, is that there will be, because those temporary licenses for mobile vendors for community events, because they don't automatically renew every year, that would require at least once a year for us to confirm that the requirements that are set out in the bylaw that apply to mobile vendors specifically are continuing to be met, and that all of the involved parties are in agreement about that.
Councillor.
Through the chair, speaking as a counselor, I guess that's here where I'm. I feel like there should be a few changes made to your draft, and I would like to know how you would like to receive my ideas and like, you want me to just, I'm not quite prepared to say them all right now because we've only had a couple of days on this. But it's not simply like I want to change a number. I like to, there are some things I'd like to see that are a little more than that.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Chair? Is it to the items that are addressed in the amending bylaw, or is it to the sort of the parent bylaw?
Well, the amended bylaw includes some similar stuff from the current bylaw. Like your draft is, no, actually, what I think your amendments are all good. There's
Okay,
more.
so it's more. than
Yes,
you're asking for.
yes.
Okay. Happy to hear that, and I think that my, depending on how controversial they are, I would either recommend, I think that communicate them to staff as soon as possible. And I can, assess them and provide some commentary on them at least in my next staff report that'll come back at the meeting on the 22nd. And then council can decide at that time whether those are things that they would like to incorporate and give second and third reading to right away, or whether those are things that I believe that there are going to be a few items probably that are going to not get captured in this amendment, just because of the tight timelines. But I think that staff has, that was identified as one of the bylaws that does need some work on it. And so what I've tried to do in this amending bylaw is take care of the things that are not very controversial, pretty much administrative in nature, and to get those done in the compressed timelines that we have available, but definitely open to hearing feedback on other pieces of the business licensing bylaw. I know that there's a council resolution outstanding to revisit some of the rules around cannabis related businesses and some other things like that. And so whether those happen right away or whether those happen as a sort of part two to this, I think that council can choose depending on what comes up.
Councillor Brown, you had indicated that you wanted to make a change to the number, so the staff could be better prepared for the next meeting, and then in case there's debate tonight.
In a perfect world, there would be, the resolution would be adopted to give first reading as amended to include an increase to 6 mobile vendors or something like that. If that's the, you might want to propose a motion of that nature and see what happens. And if not, then the fallback would be the recommendation as presented by staff.
Through the chair. So I'm not prepared to set that number. I feel like the community engagement would be important to make sure that that number is representative of what would be wanted. At this point, I was just bringing that at this point based on the fact that we have had correspondence from the public specifically about the number and whether it might change or not. So while I'm not suggesting a specific change, it was more trying to ensure that were we to pass this today, that we would then, as you had suggested, maybe in the spring before the season began, be able to have that conversation and most importantly include the chamber and have their feedback as to whether they thought this was appropriate, needs to be reduced or expanded. And that way we could have a more fulsome understanding of it before making any changes to any numbers that are there.
All right, so the recommendation is that business license amendment bylaw 1037/2024 be given first reading, which puts it into the public realm for them to comment on. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. So ideally, you would like any council feedback by
As soon as possible.
Right.
You know, there's no time limit on good ideas, so they may come in after things have been adopted, and
Right.
that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be communicating
Yeah.
back to staff. I would like, if we think that there's gonna be further discussion around that, I would like to include the mention of that when I place the ad and advise the chamber, just to start getting members of the public to think about what they might like to offer in the way of commentary on the existing business license bylaw and any possible future changes.
Okay, so we'll, on the motion, all those in favor? Motion carried. So will you communicate with the chamber?
I
Like,
will
more?
send this right away to Roanna so that she
Okay.
can have it, and I will also draft up just a little blurb that says, basically, there are some changes that are coming quite quickly, comment on them is welcome. There's also going to be an opportunity for future reconsideration of some of the divisions that are addressed in this amendment bylaw 1507.
I had started an email to her to add that to this, to the agenda, but I wanted to check with you first.
Great.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our agenda, our regular. But since we did add the in camera at the top of the meeting, the recommendation now is that council now recess and reconvene in camera with the public excluded under section 91C of the community charter to consider matters relating to personnel. By Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. All those in favor? Motion is carried.